I'm originally from New Zealand. I came to Gunnison in 1999. I ran for Vandenbush, so I ran for the Western State College cross country team. And since then, I've stayed in the valley.
And can you explain what you do now?
Now I'm a professional multi-sport athlete. I specialise in exterior triathlon. I also professional mountain bike race, and I co-own a company, Synergy Multisport, where we run training camps and clinics for multi-sport athletes, mainly triathlon, and coach individually personalised clients as well.
And so you've spent a little bit of time in the HAP lab, you said. Would you kind of describe what you've done in there and how it's benefited you?
Yeah, I've had quite a lot to do with the HAP lab. Personally, I go in there for my own testing. Scott Drum and his staff have tested me for VO2 max and lactate threshold, both running and cycling. As far as that kind of testing goes, it's probably the most beneficial thing that I've ever had done. When I first had my lactate threshold tested with Scott, it was the most useful piece of information that I've ever had to train, even though I've been coached for over 20 years by different people. So that side of it, that's what I do with them personally. I've also been involved with Scott and the lab quite a bit for testing my clients, and recently this summer we ran a training camp here where the people who came to the camp were tested by the HAP lab. So I think that it's an amazing resource to have in this area. The level of expertise and knowledge that Scott and his staff have is, I'm not going to say unprecedented, but it's definitely a resource that's possibly at this point underrated and under-advertised, and we're really lucky to have the kind of facility in this area at this altitude available for student, college and public use.
Cool. And how do you use the lactate threshold test for your training?
Well, really it's the most beneficial thing to know, because as an athlete or as an endurance athlete, it's your lactate threshold is the point at which you stop using oxygen and you go into anaerobic debt, and the longer, and you can't sustain anaerobia. So training's pretty simple really. You want to be able to go as fast as possible for as long as possible aerobically, and then just utilize your anaerobic tolerances at certain times to finish off a race or to be able to buffer the lactate out. So from my lactate threshold, I know my zones and I can train accordingly, according to what my heart rate is or other forms of information. There's two different things that they do that are actually three things that I find really useful. One, on the bike, when you have your lactate threshold taken, it also measures the power output. So your way to improve is to push more power aerobically. It's pretty easy, and then you just train accordingly to do that. And then switching, if you're doing the same thing running, the speed at which you run at your lactate threshold and corresponding heart rate, you train that appropriately to run faster, lower effort, more efficiency. So it's not that hard. The third thing that's really cool, if you do a VO2 max at the college, they give you the feedback which tells you what fuel you use at different heart rates, outputs and zones, and I think that's really useful. So in the most simplest form, if I go out, do a 5-hour ride with my heart rate at 130, I burn a lot of fat. I can tailor the way that I eat. Maybe I'd have eggs and toast for breakfast. Alternatively, if I go and run an hour at my lactate threshold, I'm burning glycogen, and I need to fuel that accordingly with the high carbohydrate diet, and then possibly carbohydrate supplements during that kind of effort. So they're probably the three biggest things that you
And where's your favorite place to train here in the Gunnison Valley?
Outside.
Anywhere?
Probably here, which is why I ran into Ben. But yeah, Hartman's rocks. I mean, here's fantastic. We've got it pretty good here. Life is good.
And here's right behind the college, which is right here. This is where Jenny comes to train. So you said Hartman Rocks. What's so good about Hartman Rocks?
Oh, the riding's fantastic. The running's amazing. It's beautiful out there.